Jimmy Kimmel has never hidden his political views. His late-night show, like many others in Hollywood, became a platform for criticizing Donald Trump during his campaign. When Trump won the election in 2016, the jokes about him became even harsher, and Kimmel himself turned the president into the main target of satire. He made fun of his rhetoric, eccentric behavior, unfortunate statements, and even his appearance. Each night, his monologues were accompanied by parody montages, where Trump's phrases were intertwined with funny videos, and the studio audience burst into laughter. Kimmel went particularly wild in one episode, airing an entire segment devoted to Trump's relationship with his wife, Melania. He compared their marriage to a cold business deal, suggesting that the First Lady tolerated her husband only for status. The studio laughed, but outside Hollywood the reaction was far from unanimous. Many viewers found the jokes too personal, and Trump supporters took them as insults. Meanwhile, Trump himself, who has never let criticism go unnoticed, couldn't ignore Kimmel's antics. He was known for closely monitoring what the media, especially television, said about him. Rumors varied. Some claimed he regularly watched the late-night shows, others said his aides prepared compilations of the most notorious speeches for him. Whatever the case, he learned about Kimmel's jokes very quickly. Trump remained silent for several days, but then, as always, he chose Twitter as his main platform for responding. Jimmy Kimmel is another loser with declining ratings. No one watches his show and his jokes are boring and predictable. He's just jealous that I'm in the Oval Office and he's only on the set. The tweet set off one of the most high-profile public conflicts of the era. News outlets immediately picked up on the president's statement, with headlines filling screens. Trump attacks Kimmel on Twitter, U.S. President versus TV host, Kimmel mocks Trump, gets fired back. Of course, Kimmel couldn't ignore it. On the next episode of his show, he devoted a monologue to the tweet itself. He brought it up on screen, read it out loud, then turned to the audience. Just imagine. The President of the United States, the leader of the free world, the man who is supposed to run the country, is sitting here writing this. The audience laughed, but Kimmel didn't stop. What next? Will he start arguing with Barney from Sesame Street? Will he sort things out with the Muppets? The studio roared with laughter. The episode was a real sensation. Critics called it a master class in satire, while Trump's fans, on the contrary, accused the host of disrespecting the head of state. Social networks were filled with comments. Some supported Kimmel, while others demanded that he apologize. But most importantly, Trump himself responded again. A few hours later he wrote a new tweet. Kimmel tries to be funny, but doesn't understand that no one takes him seriously. Watched it once, never laughed. Pathetic show. The tweet caused another storm of discussion. Kimmel quickly brought it up on his next episode, saying, "So he did watch after all. Well, that's progress." The joke once again caused a storm of laughter in the studio, and the feud between Trump and Kimmel was just beginning to gain momentum. Now their conflict has reached a new level. It has become personal. The president and the TV host did not just trade barbs, they entered into a real public duel, where every remark, every mockery became an event. The only question was who would take the next step. The conflict between Donald Trump and Jimmy Kimmel was no longer just a barb fight. It had become a spectacle, watched with rapture and outrage by the entire country. Social media was in full swing, news stories were blowing up every attack on each other, and television was heating up the interest of viewers. But while Trump was in his usual style, using Twitter as his main weapon, Kimmel launched a campaign against the president on his late-night show, creating new skits each week, making satirical videos and inviting guests who were happy to join in the ridicule. One such episode was particularly notorious. Kimmel presented a fake trailer for the film, Trump, a Presidential Drama, in which Trump was played by an actor impersonating his mannerisms and voice. In the plot, Trump wakes up in the White House realizing that his tweets have become self-governing and are now writing themselves. In the video, Trump desperately tries to delete them, but each attempt only makes things worse. At the end, he stands in front of a mirror, where his reflection suddenly speaks in his own voice. I'm the best president of all time. Everyone knows it. The studio burst into laughter, and Kimmel, pleased with the effect, added, Donnie, if you want, I'll send you a copy of the script. Although why? You're already living in this movie. The video instantly spread across the internet, and even those TV channels that usually do not support humor on political topics began to play excerpts from it. Critics were delighted. Brilliant satire! Kimmel destroyed Trump! But Trump, as always, was not going to remain silent. The next day, a response appeared on his Twitter. Jimmy Kimmel tries to be funny again, but fails as usual. His show is dying, ratings are falling, and he wastes his time on fake videos. Pathetic! This post became a top news item again. Kimmel, of course, couldn't pass by. Wait, he said in his next episode, feigning bewilderment. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, has time to answer me again? Is anyone even running the country? He looked into the camera, feigning seriousness. Sir, you have nuclear weapons. Maybe you should stop worrying about the evening show? The hall exploded with applause. At the same time, major news outlets began publishing analytical articles discussing why Trump so often responded to criticism from comedians. Some argued that it was part of his strategy to stay in the spotlight, even if that attention was accompanied by negativity. Others believed that the president simply couldn't ignore ridicule. Meanwhile, the internet was filled with new memes. Some pasted photos of Trump with quotes from his tweets and captioned them, "America's biggest issues." Others made collages of the president sitting in the Oval Office, phone in hand, while crises flared up behind him. But Trump seemed to enjoy it. He continued to comment on Kimmel's attacks, each time adding more sarcasm. In one interview, he was asked, "Mr. President, you spend a lot of time on Jimmy Kimmel. Do you consider him a real threat?" Trump chuckled. "A threat? This guy can't even raise his own rating. But I like helping losers." The answer immediately became the headline. Kimmel took advantage of this in the latest episode of his show. "The president cares about my rating?" he said with mock surprise. "That's so sweet. I would worry about his rating too, but oh wait, that's beyond repair." At that moment, a chart appeared on the screen showing Trump's decline in popularity among independent voters. There was laughter in the studio. The feud between them became more and more personal, and the further it went, the more heated it became. The only question was who would make the next move. The Trump-Kimmel spat became a media spectacle. It was no longer just a president versus a comedian. It was a major topic in the political and entertainment worlds. Every episode of Kimmel's late-night show was filled with jokes about Trump, and every tweet from the president became a headline. Kimmel didn't just make fun of Trump, he did it with a passion, a creativity that made his jokes go viral. He kept raising the stakes, trying to come up with something even more epic that would throw the president off balance. He knew that Trump was not good at letting that kind of thing go unnoticed, which meant that each new attack was guaranteed to provoke a response. Kimmel once created an entire sketch in which a group of actors played the White House press corps, desperately trying to hide Trump's own phone from him so he couldn't tweet. The plot involved aides trying to take the gadget away from him every time the president got distracted, but he always found a new one. At the end of the sketch, Kimmel played Trump himself, sitting in the Oval Office and saying menacingly, "No one will stop me. No one." He pulled out a secret phone from his pocket and, grinning, wrote on Twitter, "Jimmy Kimmel is a loser. Nobody watches his show." The moment drew a roar of laughter from the studio, but what drew even more attention was the fact that Trump actually wrote virtually the same tweet the next day. "Jimmy Kimmel is trying to be funny again, but it's pathetic. No one watches his show." Kimmel couldn't believe his luck. That same evening he went on air and said with mock seriousness, "I need to say something. I am grateful to the President of the United States." "For what?" "For confirming my joke." He displayed his sketch and Trump's tweet side by side. "This means that I am officially writing his speech. Can someone tell me where I should send the bills?" The audience burst into laughter. Of course, Journalists couldn't help but pick up on this moment. Newspapers and news portals began writing articles about how Kimmel supposedly predicted Trump's behavior. Some joked that the comedian had supernatural intuition, while others seriously wondered whether the president was really that predictable. Meanwhile, Kimmel had no intention of stopping. In one of his episodes, he proposed a radical step. "Donald, since we communicate so much, let's do it in person. Come to my studio. I promise no traps, no setups. We'll just talk like two adults." The idea became an instant sensation. Television immediately began discussing whether Trump would agree. Political observers speculated whether the president could use this moment to his advantage, or whether it would be a trap for him. Trump, as expected, was quick to respond. "How about Jimmy Kimmel stop whining and just admit his show sucks? I'd rather talk to real Americans." This set the stage for a new wave of discussion. Now everyone was talking not only about the conflict, but also about Trump deliberately avoiding the opportunity to meet the comedian face to face. Kimmel himself was delighted by the turn of events. He went back on air, opened his arms, and declared, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner. The President of the United States is afraid of the evening show." This episode broke all viewing records. People were waiting to see what would happen next. Waiting to see how Trump would respond. Waiting to see if Kimmel would make the next move. But the most important thing was that no one was going to stop. The confrontation was becoming more and more intense. There was only one question: who would lose control first? After Trump declined Kimmel's invitation to come into his studio, the standoff entered a new phase. Now, every new day brought a new wave of attacks and responses. Television, the internet, political pundits, everyone discussed their virtual duel. An entire industry of memes, parody videos, and cartoons grew up around the conflict. It seemed as if Trump and Kimmel were engaged in a full-scale war in which their only weapons were words and sarcasm. Kimmel wasn't going to stop there. He released another monologue, where he staged a fake press conference on behalf of the White House. His assistant acted as the press secretary, supposedly reading an official statement. "The president cannot accept the invitation because he has an important meeting scheduled." "With whom?" Kimmel asked. "With the TV." The room burst into laughter, and Kimmel continued, "Donald, if you're watching this." "What am I talking about? Of course you are. Let's do it this way. If you've ever laughed at one of my jokes, give it a like." The episode went viral online, with users tagging Trump in the comments, urging him to respond. The answer was not long in coming. On Twitter, the president wrote, "Kimmel keeps whining. Late night shows are dying, no one watches them, and they spend all their time on me. Pathetic." The tweet immediately went viral. Some supported Trump, while others laughed, pointing out that he was once again responding to criticism. Kimmel, of course, couldn't ignore it. The next day, on his show, he put the tweet up on the screen and said, "You're right, Donald. Late night shows are dying. That's why you can't stop watching them." The hall exploded with laughter. Meanwhile, journalists continued to dig into their past, finding new details that could shed light on their relationship. It turned out that Kimmel had attended events with Trump several times in the early 2000s. In one interview, the host admitted that he had even spoken to him a couple of times, but these were short, insignificant conversations. This gave Trump a new excuse to attack. He wrote on Twitter, "Kimmel always wanted to be part of the elite, but it didn't work out. Now he's just jealous." The attack again caused a storm of discussion. Kimmel immediately responded on his show, "Yes, Donald, you're right. I dreamed of joining the elite, but then I realized that only those who can sell steaks and bankrupt casinos are accepted there." This answer became another sensation. Now the argument between them had become personal. They were no longer discussing politics or television. It had become personal. Each new statement raised the level of tension, but the most interesting was yet to come. Their conflict turned into an endless series, where viewers waited for new episodes, and the main characters themselves could not stop. No one knew where this would lead, but one thing was clear: either of them were going to lose. The feud between Donald Trump and Jimmy Kimmel has long since grown beyond a simple exchange of barbs on social media. It was more than just a conflict between a president and a comedian. It was a genuine political and cultural phenomenon. TV channels, news sites, radio stations, everyone discussed their spats, analyzed every new phrase, every statement, every joke. Political scientists debated how far such a war could go, and viewers, divided into two camps, eagerly followed each new episode. Kimmel, aware that their conflict had become a symbol of modern America, continued to add fuel to the fire. In one episode, he introduced a new format for the show. What did Trump tweet today? The idea was simple. The comedian would open Twitter, read the president's latest posts, and immediately comment on them. So let's see what we have, he said, unrolling a long roll of paper that was coming down from the stage. Yes, gentlemen, this is the latest collection of tweets from the President of the United States. The audience laughed, but the real fun began when Kimmel got to one particular post. Lion Jimmy Kimmel is trying to be funny again. His ratings are falling, he's desperately clinging to my name. Kimmel looked up, paused, and then said with a serious face, Donald, we both know you watch every show of mine. At that moment, the screen behind him turned on and showed a montage of old videos in which Trump admitted that he loved watching television, especially late-night shows. See? He loves us, Kimmel said, throwing up his hands. The episode went viral again. People started commenting on Trump's post en masse, asking him directly, So do you watch Kimmel or not? Why do you say he's not funny when you respond to his jokes every week? Trump, of course, could not ignore such a wave. The next day, he tweeted again. I watch different shows to see what's going on. But Jimmy Kimmel is boring. Really boring. Kimmel didn't respond immediately when he saw the post. He waited until the next episode, and then, as always, he put Trump's tweet on the big screen and said, Oh, Donald, you are so inconsistent. You say I'm boring, but you keep writing about me. You know, I have a feeling he's just in love with me. The hall exploded with laughter. It seemed like the argument would never end. Neither of them wanted to give in. It wasn't just a power struggle, it was a clash of two egos, two personalities that couldn't let the other one win. A few years passed. Trump was no longer president, but his influence was still considerable. Jimmy Kimmel was still hosting his show, and every now and then, when Trump's name came up in the news, he would take the opportunity to once again taunt his old adversary. In one interview, a journalist asked Kimmel, If Trump walked into this studio now, what would you tell him? Kimmel chuckled, leaned forward and replied, I would ask, So, Donnie, have you finally admitted that you watched every episode? This response went viral again and fans immediately started sharing it on social media. Trump, upon learning of this, reacted again. Is Jimmy Kimmel still whining? I thought he retired by now. And so their correspondence war continued, becoming something of a never-ending show, where both players knew the rules, but neither was going to put an end to it. The feud that began with a few jokes became a story that seemed never-ending.